Now is the Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. He's a former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He served on the January 6th committee. He was also the lead impeachment manager for the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump. But he's doing double duty for us tonight, not just in those roles, but as a senator from California. So, Senator, I do want to start with you on what's going on in California, what you've seen. I don't live in California, and I've got dozens of friends who have lost their homes or are evacuated and not there. I'm sure that is many multiples for you and your constituents.
It really is. I've never seen anything like it. And I, unfortunately have all too much experience with fire in and around the Los Angeles area. My district, prior to the U.S. Senate, abutted the Angeles Forest. We've had devastating fires, but nothing like this. Usually in these fires, you'll see a house lost here, one lost down the street. It's very fortuitous, idiosyncratic, which houses are taken and which remain standing. But here, it's whole neighborhoods that are gone. People have lost their home. They've lost their school. They've lost their church or their synagogue. They've lost their public library. They lost their grocery store. It's all gone. And the scope of it is just breathtaking. It's in more than one part of Southern California. I was out to the Palisades. I've been out to Altadena, and very similar in both respects, just the scale of the destruction. It looks like a war zone. It's going to take a long time to rebuild. I was in the Civic Center in Pasadena, serving meals to people who are without a basis to provide for themselves right now. And I'll tell you, as heartbreaking as it is, talking to some of the folks who've lost everything, they're pretty amazing. Many expressed to me gratitude for just being alive, the determination to rebuild. And I have to say, just talking to them was uplifting, considering what they've been through.
We have had a strong federal response. The president has said that the federal government will be very, very involved in this. What's your sense of what is needed right now? There are a lot of problems, not just the recovery, the rebuilding. There are massive insurance issues that have been going on in California. We've been covering it for the last few years. A lot of public insurers pulling back on this stuff. The California Fair Plan. Now people are worried that that was the insurer of last resort, but this is such a big loss that will people actually get their money? There are people worried about their today and tomorrow, and then their next weeks and months.
That's absolutely right. And first of all, you're right about the administration. They moved really quickly here, almost immediately declaring a major disaster, then telling Californians that they were going to match 100% of the costs of responding to these fires instead of some lower match, which is also pretty extraordinary. So they've been great. The administration has been great, but the need is just overwhelming. So many people were thrown off their insurance prior to this fire. One of my own staff who lost their home in this blaze got a notice, I think, a month ago that their insurance was being canceled. But fortunately enough, it's not canceled until about a week from now.
Wow.
But a lot of others not so fortunate and lost everything and have little basis to recover. So they're going to need lots of help. SBA Administrator Guzman was out in the district that was so hard hit in Altadena today, talking to the residents about what the SBA can do. The FEMA administrator, I was with her yesterday, talking with the residents about what FEMA can do. We're going to fight to bring those resources back so that people can quickly rebuild. The most immediate thing a lot of these residents want to know, though, in talking to folks at the shelter is, does their home still stand? Many of them don't know the status of their home.
Senator, I'm going to shift with you for a moment because you are a U.S. Senator. You got to handle a few things at once. We have the conviction, the sentencing of Donald Trump. You're a lawyer. It's a technical matter. It does mean that he is now a convicted felon. It's the first time we will have a convicted felon as the president of the United States. I wanted to draw your attention to what the ADA said about the harm that Donald Trump and his conduct since this conviction have had on the judicial system, the judiciary, faith in the judiciary. This is not a convicted felon who has accepted responsibility for what he has done. It's quite the opposite. He continues to undermine the judicial system, and if not for the sentencing today, would have continued to do so. He will probably still try and get this conviction vacated and other matters that he's involved in. This is something we also have to rebuild, the trust in and faith in our judiciary.
Well, that's absolutely right. And, what I had been hoping is that the judge would sentence the president to whatever any other similarly situated felon would receive by way of sentence. Now, that did not happen, and it didn't happen for a reason that the judge properly articulated, which is this man, this now convicted felon, is going to be the president of the United States, and legally he cannot encumber that office with, for example, detention. So normally I would think that a defendant who doesn't accept responsibility, who doesn't make restitution, but rather continues to attack the justice system, attack the prosecutors or the witnesses, they might end up getting time in a case like this, even where if they accepted some responsibility, they would not. So, look, he escaped, a fair sentence that others would have received. But nevertheless, it is significant that he is now forever branded a convicted felon. He goes into his second term as a convicted felon, the first felon to serve as president of the United States. You can see how upset the president is about this, because it is it is quite a statement that the justice system makes when it brands you a felon, and he will forever be branded a felon.
There are a number of people who are asking or talking to or about whether President Biden should issue preemptive pardons in the cases of some Americans. Your name's been brought up. You said you don't like that idea. Does that mean for you it makes sense, or you don't like the idea of preemptive pardons?
I don't like the idea generally of preemptive pardons. I don't want to see a precedent where every president on their way out of office grants a broad category of pardons, maybe for people in their administration or people in their party or people aligned with their view, because I think if that becomes the new norm, it tells to people coming into an administration that they don't need to worry about where the line is in terms of whether they're committing criminal acts or not, because they can expect a pardon on the way out the door. So I'm very concerned about the broad prospect of pardons. But I also understand where the president is coming from here, because his successor is threatening to persecute people who were doing their jobs properly, holding him to account. People like Jack Smith, people like the members of the January 6th committee and others. I'm most concerned, frankly, about the witnesses before the January 6th committee, who, unlike myself, don't have the speech and debate clause to protect them. So I understand where Joe Biden is coming from also.
I want to ask you one other thing. We're 10 days away from this new administration. This Biden-Harris administration has been strongly supportive of, as they are in every state, of the tragedy that's going on in California. Are you worried at all about that? There's been a lot of nonsense on the right about the reasons for these fires and how they should be treated. Are you worried about this response becoming politicized?
Yes, I am worried about it. And frankly, it has already become politicized. I remember a time, because it wasn't that long ago, where you waited until the fires were out. You waited until lives were saved and people were safe before the political attacks began. But I guess we are way past those quaint days. And I do have concern that what happens when the new administration comes into town, whether they're going to seek to punish blue states, reward red states. Because I'll tell you this, I've been in Congress a long time, whether it was a disaster affecting Texas or Florida or New Jersey or New Hampshire, it didn't matter to me. Whether there's a red state or blue state, I was there for them, voting to support aid for them. They were not Democrats or Republicans to me. They were all Americans. I hope to hell that's the view of the next president of the United States. It really needs to be. We're in this together, particularly when we're facing a natural disaster like the tragedy being visited on Southern California right now.
And one in which, whatever your view of government is, or big government or small government, this is one in which there is no choice, whether it's from the rebuilding or the infrastructure or the insurance perspective, in which government has got to be involved. The federal and state and local governments here, there's no way to recover from this without active government involvement, whatever that may look like.
That's absolutely right. And even beyond that, you brought up the insurance issue. This was a huge problem before this crisis, before this terrible tragedy, that crisis is going to be magnified by this enormously. And there's no way the private sector is going to do this on their own. We have to work together on this to find a way to make insurance affordable and accessible to people. And to go beyond that, we're going to have to do a much better job bringing urgency to attacking climate change. Otherwise, we're going to see this over and over and over again. One of the things that makes this terrible disaster in California all the more striking is that it's January. We are not used to massive fires in January, but there is no normal anymore. The fire seasons never end. And so we need to get ahead of the climate change disaster in the making, or we're just going to see this repeated in every part of the country in different forms.
Well, you say get ahead of it. There are many people who are continuing to say that's not what this is. It's not tied to climate change. That's nonsense. It's politicization. You can think what you want, or you can look at the data, and you can look at the tragedy that we're both looking at tonight. Senator, I hope you, your family, your constituents, everybody around you stays as safe as possible. We are thinking of all of you out there in California. California Senator Adam Schiff for us tonight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.